Everybody loves Jojos. If you don't, I'm convinced you do not exist. And of them all, everybody's favorite is Steel Ball Run. Assuming they know how to read, that is. Seriously, people treat this thing like it's God's gift to man. Because it is. Depressed? Bam! Steel Ball Run. Blind? Bam! Steel Ball Run. Poor? Bam! Steel Ball Run. No girlfriend? And no petite piece of this part's perfection is the passionately patriotic pink president permanently preserving America's power, Funny Valentine. When most people are asked why they like Valentine, a few ideas come up, and one of them, his most defining and probably interesting trait, is his patriotism. And that's what makes Valentine stand out from everybody else in Steel Ball Run. Almost every character in Part 7 is kinda a massive dick. Johnny wants to walk again so he can return to his old cushy life, Diego wants to rise to the top of society, Ringo kills people to improve himself, even Lucy Steele, who starts off the story, perhaps the embodiment of innocence as a 14-year-old girl, because of a murder to protect her husband, the 40-year-old man. I swear it's not weird if you just read it, I swear. But Valentine, unlike all these characters, has a selfless motivation to protect America for as long as possible by assembling the Saint's corpse. Or at least, we think he's selfless. Perhaps more accurately, we want this man, who represents all these amazing ideals and values, to be an actually good person. But instead, Valentine has many selfish acts throughout the series. One incredibly disturbing one, which is when he forces himself onto Lucy Steele. I'm not going to show it for obvious reasons, but the links to that chapter in the description if you really want it. The scene pairs really well, however, with the prior one, which of course is Valentine's napkin speech. If you haven't already read or heard of it, basically it goes like this. Valentine asks Lucy, who is disguised as his wife, if, when she sits at the table, she would take the napkin to her right or her left. She says left, and Funny Valentine says, while that's conditionally correct, the true answer is that the laws of society, which in this case he equates with the universe, are what decides. And in this case, like a scientist determining a law or a constant, the person who takes the napkin first determines what that law is. If you have this undeniable, invincible presence, then in life, it's equivalent to taking the first napkin. No matter who you are, you'd have no choice but to follow in the napkin's taker's stead. In his speech, Valentine gives the example of even the Pope having to listen if it were, say, Jesus Christ sitting at the head of the table. Me, personally, I'd just take both napkins. I mean, what the fuck are they gonna do? Oh, but Jesus Christ would send you to hell. I'm already going to hell! This speech is more or less the embodiment of Valentine's ideology. And while yes, he does say it's for the sake of America, it's pretty clear Valentine has an obsession with power, at the very least, and has utter and complete confidence in the authoritarian force of social cues. He may not be an egomaniac like Theo, at least not as much. No, the other one. No, the other one. No, the other one. There. But they both share a similar vision for the world. Everybody falling in line to one will. Only, in this case, it's the will of America, where our blood is only the color it is because of all the red 40 we have injected 5 times a day. This obsession ties in with the established next scene, as well as how Valentine is ascribed to treat his wife as berating her. Additionally, during this dialogue, Valentine talks about wanting an heir to what he directly refers to as his power. He's trying to attain an unstoppable, undeniable, everlasting power. Although later on he says it's for the country. But I genuinely think in this case, they're one and the same, or at least Valentine thinks that. To go into why, we have to go back to Valentine's childhood. We see a flashback a little bit before Valentine's death, where a family friend visits Valentine's home and gives him a handkerchief. He says the handkerchief belonged to his father, who was captured in the Civil War. Despite being tortured every day, his father refused to let go of the handkerchief, even up to his death. He was going so far as to gouge out an eye and shove it in the cavity in order to hide it. The reason he was willing to go this far is because of the handkerchief having his son's birthday written on it. Valentine's father had conflated his love of family and his country, similar to the values of the World War II nasties. Man, this video is gonna get the shit kicked out of it in the algorithm. Obviously, this moment was at least a little traumatic for Valentine. It's easy to figure out this is the source of Valentine's patriotism, But I think it's a little more than that. I think that patriotism quite literally means everything to Valentine. And that is due to Valentine's utter and absolute loneliness. Valentine is unique among the Jojo villains in his interaction with his men. Do you either mind and control them, or seduce them to the point of worship? Hero as a solo act, Diavolo did everything in his power to not have friends. Bro is almost as introverted as the average League of Legends player. Poochie came to people acting like their savior or guide, only to be in reality trying to manipulate them. And Cars, I don't know, I haven't read Battle Tendency in like forever. He was probably just vibing with the homies. But Valentine's relationships are quite different. I'll use Mike O as an example. The relationship between him and Valentine is much more formal and orderly, because, well, Mike O is not a henchman or a servant. He's an employee. He's a government agent under his president. He's loyal, of course, but it's not as, dare I say, intimate. How do you say that word? I don't know, I've never experienced it. As the rest of the villain henchman relationships. And it's clear Valentine doesn't have much care for his employees, considering he was so willing to kill Axl Rowe. That distance also extends to how he treats his wife, or at least who he thought was his wife. Also well, whatever, the point is he was only caring about the physical aspect of it. Additionally, he seemed to be somewhat physically distant from Scarlet, as in, like, they were literally far away from each other most of the time. His relationship with Lucy falls into a similar pattern and is directly contrasted to our relationship with Stephen Steele. While Valentine has this, like, really weird relationship with Lucy, referring to as a goddess and the prior stated scene, if I had to sum it up, I'd say that Valentine views Lucy as a beautiful thing to be viewed from afar, giving him good fortune like a goddess, but also consciously or subconsciously wanting more out of it. Stephen also views Lucy as somewhat of a goddess, as it was she who was able to save him from his despair, but Stephen, despite never having touched Lucy, has a much more close relation to her, and is able to genuinely appreciate her as a person. This loneliness is accentuated by Valentine's stand, dirty deeds done dirt cheap. I'm not gonna call it D4C. Dirty deeds done dirt cheap is way more fun to say. Anyway, filthy acts at a reasonable price allows Valentine to travel dimensions and bring in versions of himself. Also other people, but mostly himself. Atrocious actions allowed affordably's design was stated by Araki to be directly inspired by a magician pulling a white rabbit out of a hat. That theme is continued with the catchphrase, and I hope I'm getting this right, Doja, which more or less translates to ta-da. This idea of a magician putting on a show reminds me a bit of Valentine's role as a politician. Everybody knows and can see Valentine, but he seems rather popular as a president, but nobody can understand him. Additionally, while most JoJo main villains fight alone, scratch that, all of them, unless you count Kira's cat. No, the other one. No, you know what? You're fired, gag I've set up just now. No, wait, at least change it first. Okay. Now get the fuck out. Right, but Valentine literally bringing in more hymns to help him, instead of actually letting people directly help him, is kinda on the nose for loneliness. Many have also pointed out how this ability is representative of his patriotism. In other words, he's replaced the need for fighting alongside others with fighting with what is simultaneously a representation of his patriotism, as many individuals from different places all lying down for America, and also literally him surrounding himself with more of himself, shows Valentine is a person represented by an obvious patriotism and a subconscious loneliness. You could also view the president's pseudo-cloning as a reflection of an underlying narcissism. However, this narcissism, which undeniably plays a role in his character, is heavily related to his loneliness. The more lonely Valentine is, the more he's forced to rely on and value himself, which in turn only isolates him more. It's a sick feedback loop. It seems to me that when Valentine was young and had nobody to support him, when he felt alone after the death of his father, as his mother seemed so dismayed by her own pain, he was unable to comfort him, he turned to patriotism as an answer, inspired by his father's actions and the words of his father's comrade. But ultimately, it wasn't enough for him, resulting in a desire for both power over other people and Love Train's ability to deflect misfortune in order to maybe feel whole, quote unquote. But he's never able to fully understand, or perhaps more importantly, trust other people. Possibly because he always just delved further into his patriotism to solve his problems. And of course, it's because of the lack of trust that he loses in the end. If you don't know, Valentine loses in the end because he couldn't trust anybody. Johnny is willing to to let Valentine win if Valentine just proves he had no intent of hurting and betraying Johnny by proving he was in fact not packing heat. Just like us, Johnny wants to believe Valentine is a good person, but Valentine brought a gun to a peace talk, and in his final moments, Valentine shows no weakness, and perhaps by extension, any humanity. Instead, he remains steadfast and drops perhaps his most famous quote, "My heart and actions are utterly unclouded. They are those of justice." I don't think Valentine ever understood himself because of this quote, and that's why, in the end, he only has his patriotism to support him, and in his death, it crumbles into the earth with him. Anyways, happy 4th of July! Fuck you mean, but it's May. Do you want to shoot fireworks or not? Anyway, subscribe. Oh, I mean, I probably won't make much more Jojos content. I don't know, maybe I will. Bye!